Oh my goodness, there's a lot to cover on this record right here. Got a lot of notes. Some of it I can't even read. I'm gonna have to spend some of my time on this video translating my chicken scratch into plain English. Boy, what an interesting history to this record by a genius band. Number Number 16, up 8 from 24. Yes, owner of the Lonely Heart on my fancy playlist, November 20th, 1983. Oh boy, where do I start? Yes, well, let's go back a little bit to the beginning. Back to those old memories back in the late 60s and early 70s when Yes was a progressive, one of the most brilliant progressive rock bands, although they were accused with some understanding. I mean, a lot of these progressive bands, think of this era, you got Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Jethro Tull, their lyrics transcended the basic pop formula. We're entering into almost Einstein genius-like territory with the songwriting. Back in the day, Yes formed in 1968. It started out when John Anderson met Chris Squire, a bass player. They met at a party that was thrown by the music industry, and they formed a group, Yes. And oh boy, their first American hit, their breakthrough American hit was I've Seen All the Good People. Got that got John Anderson spearheading that brilliant a cappella beginning to that record. I mean, it was a great hook. The song was called Your Move. Fall of 1971 went to number 40 here in the States, just barely cracked the top 40. Then came Roundabout. The mountains come out of the sky and they stand there. I mean, hey, that's precious. Not many can come up with something like that. Man, you listen to something like that, you're thinking, man, I'm on to something right here. I'm on to greatness, listening to greatness. Well, anyway, you got Roundabout went to number 13 on Billboard's Hot 100, and they covered America, the song America by Simon and Garfunkel. Remember that Simon and Garfunkel song, Lost 45, late 70, early 71, covered by Yes in 1972. The version by Yes went to number 46 on Billboard's Hot 100, and then came And You and I. Gosh, now, fall of 72. That was the 5-minute edit of that record almost cracked the top 40 here in the States. It was played on some of the top 40 AM radio stations, including the local one here in Tuscaloosa, 1230 WTBC. WTBC played that record. And the album cut itself. And that's the thing about Yes. A lot of people, they were shocked. Their fans were shocked at the sheer unabashed commercial appeal of Owner of the Lonely Heart. This is not Yes, they say. They said, this is not the progressive band I grew up with or that I known back in the day. But they could be commercial. Roundabout going to number 13 on Billboard's Hot 100 in 1972. And I tell you this, Atlantic Records, their record label, it might have been Atco, but it was part of Atlantic. They were gunning for this record to be a hit. They were promoting it. It's got to happen. Ahmet, I believe that's how you pronounce his name, Ahmet Ertegun, a legend behind the scenes, president of Atlantic Records, co-founder of Atlantic Records, co-founded Atlantic Records back in the late 40s when it was basically an R&B label. Signed in the 50s, signing groups like the Drifters, the Clovers, Solomon Brooke, and later Aretha Franklin, Led Zeppelin. And when Ahmet Ertegun wanted a song to be a hit, well, it was going to happen one way or the other. Now, by the time John Anderson, he had rejoined the group, becoming lead singer of Yes. By the time he got to this record, Owner of the Lonely Heart, it had been mostly done from what I've read. The history's a little bit confusing, and I'll try to sort it out for you as best I can. The song was basically written, but the group members were having some problems coming up with the verses of the record. John Anderson teamed up with another group member, a brand spanking new group member of Yes. His name was Trevor Rabin. Trevor Rabin, a classically trained guitarist from South Africa, but he got tired of apartheid. He was against apartheid. He moved to England in 1977, joined Yes in 1983, and he teamed up. This is the nuts and bolts of the whole thing. It's more complicated than this, believe me, but the nuts and bolts is John Anderson and Trevor Rabin, they teamed up for about 3 weeks and they finished up this record. They were filling up holes, filling up spaces, and other cuts on the album, and they worked on this song. Trevor Rabin, he arranged the chorus of this record. He came up with a bass line of this record. Trevor Rabin. Trevor Rabin. You're going to love this. Ah, yes, this is the stuff of rock history right here. He came up with a title. Owner of the Lonely Heart, Trevor Rabin did. He came up with the title when he went to the bathroom. It was one of those protracted stays. I don't need to go into all the details. You know, it was one of these protracted long stays in the bathroom. He liked singing in the bathroom, and the bathroom he was in had great acoustics. Singing in the bathroom, and boom, came up with the title, Owner of the Lonely Heart. Now, let's get to the brass tacks of how this song came about. The songwriting, the microscope look at this record. I wrote it down. Bear with me here. Bear with me. I wrote it down. John Anderson and Trevor Rabin getting together, writing this song, they started trading lines. And John Anderson came up with the line, move yourself. First line, move yourself. You always live your life never thinking about the future, never thinking of the future. He came up with that line, John Anderson did. Then Trevor Rabin came up with a line, prove yourself, win or loser. And Trevor Rabin got up and said, well, I'm going to let you write the rest of this one, the verses. He said something, when he gets up and says, I got to go. He tells John Anderson, I got to go. Trevor Rabin did. And John Anderson, he wrote basically most of the verses of this record. God, John Anderson, just brilliant lyricist, man. He's shown. And you and I, back in the fall of '72, that this was just celestial brilliance. And so was this record, Owner of the Lonely Heart. We got that classic rock coming back in an era that was growing increasingly techno-pop. Not necessarily a bad thing, not by any means, but it was certainly a different sounding record. Went to #1 here in the States. Big comeback for Yes. And then the one that came after that, I forgot the name of the song that came after that. That was also a cappella. Well, it'll come to me later. That's what you get when you try to ad-lib. You start sliding all over the place, slipping and sliding like Little Richard used to. Oh God, I had the title in my head. Well, forget it. Owner of the Lonely Heart at number. I'm getting forgetful here. It's 1 o'clock in the morning. Owner of the Lonely Heart at number 16 on my fancy playlist, November 20th, 1983.